logical to speak on this, but I'm going to try to make a logical assessment out there on what little information I have. And it is this. It would seem to me that if Goodell threw down a 4-game suspension, that he would have the evidence to back up his claim that Brady knew something or was responsible for at least part of it. So he's going to issue, a 4-game suspension. So then they go into this type of arbitration type of thing and, appeal the suspension, the 4-game suspension, blah, 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 blah. And now it's is it almost a month later or so? It's been a few weeks since that hearing. Now, it's not going to take you very long to come up with a decision off of that unless you're going to stand pat on your decision and suspend, arguably the current best quarterback in the NFL from a number of games. In which case, that there's probably going to be a lawsuit. So what you're trying to do is delay. Well, if you don't issue your decision on the arbitration or whatever it is, the appeals, until like 2 weeks before the season officially starts, it is unlikely that Brady is going to be able to get his appeal or his lawsuit heard in a court of law before the football gets kicked in a game. So he's kind of hoping, in my view, Goodell is kind of hoping that he can delay this long enough to make the decision so that when it comes right down to it, that a 1 or 2 game suspension is still going to fly. And now, of course, Brady, he's hired a bunch of people, lawyers that aren't stupid, so they're going to try to say, while we are appealing this or trying this, can you set aside the commissioner's decision to suspend him? And a judge is most likely going to say, motion granted. You can't suspend Tom Brady while this appeal or lawsuit, litigation, whatever is going on. And, that could be a month or two. So, but if he loses, then, he's going to be serving a suspension sometime in the middle of the season. But if he wins, that means he doesn't miss any games. He doesn't miss any games. You get what I'm saying? That's the way it is. But I am not here to talk about Tom Brady because, again, I don't really care. But I'm bringing that up because football is coming rather quickly, which also kind of helps to usher in fall and marks the end of summer. Unfortunately, that's the only bad thing about looking forward to football because that's a fall sport. And you have to say goodbye, at least around in New England, to hot summer nights. Remember that song from Grease? Oh, hot summer nights. Well, however it went, I don't remember. I'm not a musical singer from Grease. But anyway, here's a story that I originally wanted to bring to you, and I don't know why I got off on the tangent of Brady, but I apologize for all you anti-Brady fans out there. And there are a bunch of you. I know a lot of people. Look, either you love him or you hate him, and there are a bunch of people that, probably just as many people hate him as love him. And so I call them, they're Brady fans and anti-Brady fans. So when you anti-Brady fans, you're just as adamant about disliking the guy as the pro fans are of supporting the guy. But in any case, we have a study here. A study. Now, pay it close attention and write this down because we're going to have to visit this study sometime in January of 2016. And this is a study that is thinking that they're going to predict who is going to play in the 50th Super Bowl in 2016. And people are going to be shocked it's a Harvard study. These Harvard students decided to do a study, I guess. But they're saying that the Seahawks are going to be in Super Bowl 50 facing off against the Miami Dolphins. A student at the school has developed a model for predicting the odds for each NFL team to make the 2015 playoffs, and his picks for the top teams in each league are both expected and shocking. Now, Kurt Ballard had his findings published, actually, on the Harvard College Sports Analysis Collective webpage. He decided that he was going to try to... Harvard, you spend all that money to try to predict, on a Harvard education, to try to predict who's going to win the Super Bowl. Now, I guess if you can accurately predict who's going to win the Super Bowl, you might want to put bet a lot of money on it, and then you, of course, would win a lot of money. But then you'd have to wonder, will somebody think that because you put all this money down, are you actually out there trying to, puff up the results or the returns, as it were? Speaking of puffing up the returns, is it New Bedford? New Bedford, Massachusetts. They were supposed to be building a new casino, but the operator that was going to be a part of building it has decided they don't have the money, or they don't want to spend the money, or something like this. I don't know. I heard it in passing. I wasn't too sure, but it doesn't look like there's going to be a casino anytime soon on the Cape in New Bedford. But in any case, the findings published on the Harvard College Sports Analysis Collective webpage. Here's how he got to the numbers for each team. Now, the method that he came up with uses Pro Football References approximate value statistics, the site's best measure of trying to tease out individual talent. Then using ESPN's NFL depth charts. Now, I don't know what half this stuff means because I don't get into all this stuff. But let's just say that he did a lot of mumbo jumbo in there to come up with this study. To do this study, he had all this mumbo jumbo to come up with two teams that he thinks is going to end up in the Super Bowl. And keep in mind, this is New England. Just saying, this is New England, and they're not predicting that the pay. Well, I don't know. Maybe Brady will quit or something. He'll just drop out of the NFL, retire early or something. But they're not predicting. The study is not predicting the Pats in the Super Bowl, Super Bowl 50. But they are predicting this article. This young man from Harvard is predicting that Seattle and Miami, of all people, will be going to the Super Bowl. Interesting indeed. Did you know? Kind of sounding like, was it Get Smart? Did you know that, good grief, my computers are just having a fit today, aren't they? I guess they must have been overworked. But did you know that according to San Francisco.cbs local, that the sexual appetite of teens are down, especially for boys. And, of course, the liberal nut jobs out there in California are trying to attribute the decline in sexual activity among American teens, especially American teen boys, is the fact that, they're getting better sex education in school. No, the problem is that this is this is going to be a bigger problem than we realize. But boys are I hate to use the phrase that they're not interested in sex. Because their libido is what it is at that age, and it's just going to naturally go off. But here's the thing: boys are playing video games longer and harder. Now, what I mean by harder, the games are harder. They're more difficult to play. And that you just can't decide, well, I'm, to have all of these different boys to just not want to have sex, as teenagers. And that you can't attribute that they're not having sex by sex education. That doesn't jive. It doesn't jive together. So what we have here is we have something that we do know that's happening is that video games, although some girls do play them, it is mostly a male-dominated recreational activity, video games. And the sex drive has energy. It takes nutrients and energy and concentration. Well, if you replace, that sort of consciousness on that particular type of activity and replace it with something else, well, that desire gets mostly satiated. Now, why do we know this? Is because, well, we see the number of boys with something that's new, I guess, that they're calling video game addiction. Now, I'm not buying into this video game addiction kind of stuff, but there are some people that just play it way too often, and they need to really stop. I mean, look, I understand the allure of playing video games. I happen to like playing video games myself. I don't play them a lot, simply because they can really, before you know it, they can suck your time away, and you don't know that your time has been sucked away. You don't know, because you looked at it's kind of like, well, I've gotten lost in playing video games before. You don't know what time it is. Look, you're talking about a guy that used to get lost, used to go into a Barnes & Noble bookstore, early afternoon or late morning, around 11, noon, 1 o'clock, on a Saturday or something, or a Sunday, and then look up and realize that the street lights outside are coming on because it is now like 6 or 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. So I understand how that you can lose time when you're doing something that you happen to enjoy. Well, it happens on this program all the time. A lot of times I'm thoroughly enjoying what I'm doing and what I'm saying, that I totally kind of, if I didn't have alerts on the time clock facing me, sometimes I wouldn't know that it was a time for a break and to take that break, because you get lost in what you lose your sense of time when you're having fun. It's also why you're very conscious of time when you're bored or when you're not having fun, because you want to move forward and get out of whatever situation that you're in. And sometimes that takes discipline, and sometimes it takes, other things to get you moving into a different direction. Well, the same thing happens with video games, that you can get lost in these things. Not that they're necessarily addictive. I guess if you have an addictive personality, you could become addicted, so to speak, to video games. But I'm not buying the whole addiction to video games kind of crap. But we know boys are very attracted to these types of games because of the fantasy element of them. It makes them seem, a lot of boys, it makes them seem stronger, smarter, what have you, against their opponents, and they're not getting physically hurt most of the time while they're playing video games. So that's also an attractive aspect. So there's no real contact with people that you may not like if you're a kid. So you're always going to be on the positive. Even if you're losing, they're not going to really know who you are. So that's taking all your concentration. So you don't have time to go out on a date. You don't have time to really think about girls. And sure, you can talk about girls, with your buddies when they come over to play games with you, but you're really not into girls at that particular moment because you're too busy playing and concentrating on the game. You ever try any of the war games, the first-person war games? You don't have time to think about sex. Well, by the same token, as you get older, you don't have time to think about things that are important, like elections either. But still, young men still play these video games. they're fun, I guess.